Live. Let me get the link for the live so we can share in Telegram. Okay, we usually start with Martin, but he's on vacation now. So, Paul, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So lately I've been working on the test runner the for the operations, and so now that it's implemented, I've went up the stack to be able to start implementing the core functions of these operations. So the one I'm focusing right now is to be able to validate the execution payload, which is process execution payload, which is one of the core functions that we will need to run in the beacon chain state transition. And to be able to implement that, basically, we need to assert different types of things, etc., and create a new state when receiving a new execution payload, like updating the old state with the new execution payload. And to be able to do that, we need to be able to basically serialize and deserialize lists, which we are not able to do for now. So we'll need to look into that to be able to make sure that we're able to serialize and deserialize lists. Um, and yeah, mainly mainly working on that, and now looking into the communication between the consensus and execution clients to start sending the payloads to so I can like test to see if we can communicate with the execution layer, and we can send execution payloads and get some validation. So I'm looking into that, and so yeah, that's all. And just for a question, I am curious to know if you know how are the data sent from the consensus to the execution layer, in the sense that do we serialize them, for example, or do we serialize them and snappy compress them, or things like that. I haven't found for now how, like, in what state or in what shape the data is sent through, because I for sure we're not sending from Elixir consensus client just a execution payload in a in a Elixir struct to Reth, for example, or to Get. So I'm curious to know how we send it, but I haven't found the data for now. So yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know. That's the first answer, but the second answer is that should probably be in the engine API specification, because the engine API specification should give you the method names, the arguments, and when it tells you the arguments, it should specify how they are serialized, if they need to be serialized, or if it's just something like a basic JSON that, which is again a serialization format, of course, but a more like classic HTTP, like REST API style. But that's a serialization mechanism. Maybe they're using some of that. If it doesn't specify, I would guess that it's just a JSON object inside of a REST query. But we should check. I see that Thomas is commenting that this says that the encoding is inherits from the Ethereum JSON RPC specification, and if that's the case, basically that's JSON inside of JSON RPC. So yeah, we should test that. From what I hear from you, that's on the one hand, that's great progress. I hear that you're blocked on the list. Like, one of the reasons why the operation, like the full test cannot progress, is because we cannot yet serialize lists in SSF format, which is something that we in turn need to be able to hash that, as we've been talking before, to calculate like the Merkle root of a list. Yeah, that's on the one hand. But on the other hand, let me know. But I think that you can still continue to check the communication part with the execution client. Is that right? Like independently of this blocker?
Yes, normally it shouldn't be a problem for me to communicate with the execution layer. At least for now, I haven't found a blocker. Indeed, it's a blocker for the test suite because basically what we're supposed to do is that we're supposed to run process execution payload, and then we're supposed to update the state, hash the state, snappy compress the state, and then compare this new state that we just built and serialized and compressed to a post state that they give us, so we can make sure that the whole process of our function is correct. Unfortunately, we're not able to do it for now, so I'll need to wait to make the tests pass until the implementation of the serialization and deserialization of the lists. um, and then just think I'm no, and then yeah, basically that's it.
No, yeah, that's perfectly clear. We cannot make the spec tests work until we can compress that, and sorry, until we can serialize and compress that. And if we can't serialize lists, then we cannot serialize the post beacon state. Perfectly understandable. Um, do you have a clear feature to work on next while you're blocked on this part?
Yes, so for now I will make sure that we're able to communicate, because so the function process execution payload has different steps. Most of the steps are assertions, just making sure that you run a function and it returns true. For example, I don't know, verify rando or things like that, just to make sure that it's actually valid or it's actually in the right sequence. I don't know. Um, so these are only assertions, and I think the only actual place, I know it's also an assertion, but the place that we're calling the execution client is notify payload, notify new payload version 2. And so I implemented this function, and I can just, now I want to verify if it actually works. So I can do that. So I'm working on that right now. And then after that, I think I'll implement the Open API specs on the Beacon API. And then I'll be, I think I'll finish that part. So potentially after I'll come back to see and discuss with you guys where we can go from there, or new tasks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's very clear as well. All right, Tomas, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yesterday, I continued work on the uh, um, sorry, I forgot a bit. Oh yeah, integrating the Beacon API with the whole peer gossip and blog storing components. I filmed the demo earlier today. Uh, and today I was gonna work on uh, requesting blocks from a peer, but I can add a list serializing to the SSID NIF. For now, I think I can have it in a couple of hours. Uh, but to completely generalize the whole encoding and decoding, will we need a whole refactor. It should take a lot of time, and we should really think how we are gonna go about that. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's perfect. I for now, so because this is a blocker for what Paul is doing, I would just make a quick fix so that we can add the so we can add list serialization. That would be great, and afterwards we can we can reorganize ourselves and have an in-depth tech discussion on how we can refactor this so it can be generalized to all other types. And we also should open up new, after we have that discussion, we should open up a couple of issues so that we can implement all of the other composite types. I think that we can even make those. I don't know if those are good first issues. Maybe those are a bit more complex than just basic types, but we should at least check that. And also, like, quick question: Are those
What
are
do
the
you mean by composite
yeah,
types?
composite types is basically lists, containers, etc. Like for now, the only composite type that we have implemented is container, which is map. Like
Yeah,
we can, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
the composite types are actually embedded inside the container encoding decoding logic. It's just until now we didn't have to encode lists, so the problem never like appeared to be so.
Right. Yeah, but I'm not fully sure that we are on the same page about that. Like, for instance, can we are sure that we now cannot serialize a list, right?
Yeah,
Are we? Yeah. And
we can't.
we also probably can't serialize a bit vector or a vector in general, right?
Yeah, the code isn't there to do that.
That's exactly what I mean. So basically, composite types are not serializable on our end, at least. Like
Yeah,
probably those are serializable on the Rust side because there's a full library there, but we don't have the way to communicate that through NIFs as yet. Is that the case?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I meant. We need to add support for all of those types so that they can be correctly serialized.
Would
For
we
now,
need
the
also for
yeah.
that logic for like basic types, UN64, UN32, and all of that? Uh,
Is that a question or an
yeah,
affirmation?
yeah, it's a question.
I think
Uh,
we're doing pretty well with basic types, aren't we? Are we having problems with basic types?
we don't have any like for now. The only thing we can encode decode with the SSNIF are containers.
Okay.
But how can we find the list of the things that we actually need to implement? Because potentially, maybe we need to implement like serialization, deserialization for containers and lists, and that's all. Or maybe containers, lists, and bit vectors, or I don't know. Um,
Unfortunately, we're building the list. I don't know if there's any list that we have. The reason why I said this is because composite types, I think that cannot be let me ask a question first. If we have, like, currently with the current implementation, if we have a list inside of a map, is that list correctly serialized on its own, or
Yeah,
is that something? Oh,
yes.
nice. So our problem is
It's
only
just the interface between the Elixir and Rust sides.
it's a bit more than that, right? So it's what's conditioning us is like in the end is it is the interface that's the missing code. But basically, our problem is not that we cannot serialize lists. We can serialize lists, but we cannot serialize lists as a first order citizen, right?
Yeah,
So
the same
if we
with
can,
basic types.
I really don't think that we will need to encode basic types as first order citizens. We probably will only encode them inside of
Some of
container.
the peer-to-peer requests and responses consist of just like a basic type. For now,
Okay,
I've been like encoding
then
it
we will.
manually from Elixir. It's not really a big problem, but we
Right.
could make a library for that.
Let's just like that's a very good set of questions. Then we will need to implement some of those. I think that we will need to implement them as they come, but we should at least have a strategy for all of them. The first step, we just do this for lists for now, so that we can unblock Paul, and after that, then we need to have a discussion maybe tomorrow on, probably not today, but tomorrow, on how, if we need to implement a new type, how we would go with it, and then we can
Yeah,
just add new issues for each of the types, or we can like add serializations as we need them. For composites, I would go with all of them without question. For individual ones, as they are like plenty of them, I would go maybe as they come. That's my first take on it, at least. But we can discuss that in depth tomorrow.
Okay, I'll write down some ideas I already have for that, and we can discuss it tomorrow.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, do you have anything else? Perfect. So as for me, I've been almost 100% of my day was reviewing applications for the bootcamp. We had more than 70 applications, so that's plenty of work to review. I want to especially thank like everyone that applied for the bootcamp and for answering all of the questions. I know that has been some work on your side as well. Probably all of you spent some time working on it, learning Elixir if you didn't already have any knowledge on it, etc. So thank you all for applying. I'll try to finish reviewing all of those today. I promise that we are giving all of those a very thorough read, and we are paying special attention to what every single one of you read. But yeah, at the end of the day, at the end of today, my expectation is to have like a selected list of participants that will go into an interview, and then in the interviews we can select like who will participate with us in this, and then we can discuss further details with everybody. Not 100% sure that we have this for today, but that's my aim. I'm aiming to have this for today and working on it as hard as possible. So yeah, I will update you all as soon as I can with that, but I don't have any development updates because of this, unfortunately. So that's what I've been working on these last couple of days. Any final comments or questions? All right, I take that as a no, so we can finish we can finish the daily for today. And thank you all for joining, and see you all tomorrow.